Hey there! Is today your first time here? Or maybe your first time in a while? If so, maybe you're wondering exactly who we are and what this church is all about. Well, we'd like you to know that we're a group of ordinary people who are on an amazing journey together, following Christ. Our guide is the Bible because it's the divinely inspired Word of God, and it will never take us in the wrong direction. Along the way, we hope you'll see that we are welcoming and spiritually passionate, and that getting to know you is a big deal to us. We know that the road is rough sometimes, but we'll work really hard to bring you practical and relevant messages to equip and encourage you through life's ups and downs. We want you to know that we care about this community, and we believe that it's our job to make it a better place. So, no matter who you are or where you've been, we're glad you're here with us today, and we hope that you'll join us on our journey, following Christ and living out His plan for us. So, welcome to church.
Well, good morning and welcome again to Sunday School. We appreciate everyone attending and being so consistent. It's a pretty big deal to get up on a Sunday morning and attend a Sunday School class when generally the weekend is time to sleep in. And so it's really important to take time and spend time in the Word of God to see what He has to say to us about our life, about our decisions, about the course that we intend to take for our families. We need His help. We need His direction on all of these things. So thank you again for logging in. We appreciate it more than we can tell you. So let's go ahead and get right into our lesson today. The subject of our lesson is injustice and hope. And I think all of us have dealt with some cases of injustice. And we also know that hope is right around the corner. And there are certain things we can do, or we can hear certain things that somebody would say at a certain time that really would keep hope alive. And so today we hope to do that and learn that from our lesson with Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Ishmael. So I want to begin with a few opening questions to encourage you to think about something. And one is, why is it so important to patiently wait on the promises of God? Why is it so important to patiently wait on the promises of God? Number two, when should a parent get involved with a dispute between children? You know, that does happen. Grown folk can get involved in in a dispute between or disagreement between kids, and the parent can act like the kids, can act worse than the kids. Number two, what has to happen for you to open your eyes physically or spiritually more fully to God's blessings? That's one of the questions in our commentary. And by the way, we're using the King James annual commentary, the standard annual King James commentary for our lesson, and it has quite a bit of information on each verse that we won't have time to dig into the whole thing. In the first few weeks, we've learned the 5 books of law, the 12 books of history, and the 5 books of poetry, and the 5 major prophets. And today, we're going to ask the class to recite the 12 minor prophets today as well. So we'd hope you'll be able to do that. And I've learned them, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to look at them so as not to repeat it, to say I'm wrong on the camera. But Hosea, Joel, Amos, and Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the 12 minor prophets we'd like you to be able to recite. So, and somebody may be able to recite all of them, the whole Old Testament. We'll see if that's a possibility today as well. So let's jump right into our lesson. Part 1 deals with the last laugh. And that's in Genesis 21, verses 8 through 13. And it's broken down in 2 sections. One section, A, is what Sarah saw. That's verse 8 and 9. And part 2 is what Sarah said. And that's in verses 10 and 11. So let's look at the first part, what Sarah saw, in verse 8 and 9. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which had borne unto Abraham, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Now let's talk about a little bit about verse 8. Isaac's weaning was a celebrated event, and he no longer depended on his mother's breast milk for nourishment. And this allowed him to spend a whole lot more time with his father and a whole lot more time with other men. You know, that's important for young men to spend time with adult male figures I think, to develop their masculinity, to develop their instinct and sense to provide and to go out and hunt, so to speak. And I think it's important to, and I'm sure this is not what only I think, but many other folks that are much more trained than I feel the same way, that's important for a young boy to be mentored by a male figure. And that's something that many of us, all I think men that have any degree of influence in that child's life, or if you don't have influence in that child's life, that we should mentor young men as often as we can. And so this is a very important thing to do. This important ceremony was important for any young boy, but especially for this child of promise. You know, he was a child that Abraham and Sarah did not see any remote possibility of taking place. So he was a miracle child of promise. And it was this celebration was a really important event for Isaac. And in verse 9, a little commentary here, Ishmael was about 17 years old when they put him out. And he was still a young boy, a teenager, and his mother was a young mother as well. So history doesn't tell us exactly what Ishmael said or what he did to be accused by Sarah of mocking her child, Ishmael, which is just a little bitty boy, 3 or 4 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was just a real little child. And sometimes kids can be cruel. And even teenagers can be cruel and not thinking about what they're saying and what they're doing, and they're not thinking about the consequences of the words that comes out of their mouth. But Sarah and Hagar, I want to kind of make this point, wasn't no close friends either. You know, Sarah didn't like what had happened, and she was the one that pretty much instigated the whole thing. So it's likely that anything that Hagar or Ishmael said, she was real sensitive to it anyway. And it may have caused her to overreact. You know, sometimes when our emotions get in a situation, we make say words out of our emotions, and sometimes they're not the right word. We do things out of our emotions that can cause consequences. But let's go to the second part. What Sarah said in verse 10 and 11. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son. For the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. As if Abraham wasn't even the child's father. Get him out of here, you know. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. So then whatever made Sarah upset, it caused her to make to give an executive order. You know, Sarah had a little power. You know, wives got y'all know wives got a little power anyway. So she gave an executive order, put him out of him. And this order, which subjected Hagar and Ishmael to a few things: starvation, exposure, violence. None of that seemed to even bother Sarah at this point. She was upset. She was heated up. And all she wanted them to do is get out of here. But see, the thing of it is, all this stuff started with Sarah giving her slave to be a wife to Abraham, and then authorizing Abraham to impregnate the bondwoman, as she calls her, Hagar. But now she referred to Hagar and Ishmael. They didn't even call their names. She called them this bondwoman and her son, like in the third person. And this may be a way, or may have been a way, for Sarah to depersonalize both of them. And also a way to free Abraham, in her mind. We know this is a lot of speculation, and we're reading into it, trying to understand this whole situation, this whole soap opera, this episode. It may have been a way for her to free Abraham from any kind of obligations. Let me say it this way: any kind of child support, any kind of inheritance for Ishmael. Ain't that something? Well, I'm gonna go on because ain't that something? Trying to free this man up from. Well, look, don't let me start talking about child support. So I'm gonna go on to verse 11. The fact is, Abraham loved his son. It was bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. This boy had his blood running warm in his vein. He loved his son Ishmael, and he wasn't naive to the fact that if I send y'all away out here in this wilderness, it ain't gonna be safe, and it ain't gonna be good, and it's gonna be dangerous out there. After all, when God specified that Abraham's heir would be his own flesh and blood, Sarah was not even mentioned in that verse. So there's that to look at as well. That's in Genesis 15:4. Now let's go to section 2. We see a lasting promise. This is in Genesis 21:14 through 20, and it's broken down in two sections, or three sections rather. One is Hagar's wondering, that's 14 through 16, and then next is God's hearing, that's letter B, and letter C is God's help. Let's look at letter A first, Hagar's wondering. Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat her down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. So let's look at a little commentary here on verse 14. The only record that we have of Abraham and Ishmael together after this long separation is when Ishmael came back home to help his little brother Isaac bury their father. And you read about that in Genesis 25:9. But there's no record that Hagar even came to the homegoing service, or there's no record that she even came back. So when she got out of there, she left there, she was, it looked like she burned all her bridges. And she didn't come to pay her respects to the homegoing service. She eventually went back down to Egypt. You read about that in Genesis 21:21. So Hagar's wilderness wandering in the wilderness is a stark reminder of the journey that Israel had in their wandering experience. You read about this from Egypt. You read about this in Deuteronomy 2:1. And then later Abraham would designate a well in that area that was called Beersheba, Genesis 21:31. And Isaac and Jacob, both of them have some real noteworthy spiritual experiences in that area. So this is all intertwined and interwoven. You never know what the Lord is going to do, even in your circumstance or situation. It looks like he ain't gonna do nothing down here, whatever that down here is. But you don't never know what the Lord is gonna do, because his hand is much longer and stretcher than our hand. His vision, his eyesight is way, way deeper and further than what we can see. Why? Because he knows the end from the beginning. He's Alpha and he's Omega. He's the beginning and he's the end. He's omnipresent. He's omniscient, omnipotent. He knows everything. He everywhere at the same time. And he got all the power. All of it. That's a pretty big deal. So you read about this in Genesis 26 and 23 through 25, about their experiences, about Jacob and Isaac's experiences, and also in chapter 46 of Genesis, verses 1 through 4. Now, on verse 15, we don't know how long Hagar wandered in the wilderness before they ran out of food and ran out of water. We don't know. But Abraham more than likely gave them as much as they could carry as a woman and a teenage boy when they sent them away. We see the word cast. The word cast in this verse is the same word that we see when Joseph was cast into a well and left for dead. Because see, Hagar, when she cast her son under this bush, she thought this boy was going to die. So it's assumed that for Hagar to be able, just to be able to leave her child, her teenage child, under a bush, that the boy probably didn't even have enough strength to save himself. Now you imagine how hard that was for a mother to leave her child, knowing in her mind that this boy is about to die. That's a rough situation, and you can imagine the bitterness that she may have had inside because of what Sarah persuaded Abraham to do. Send him out of here. Get him out of here. Send both of them out of here. Boy, anyway, verse 16. The word bowshot, although unknown to Hagar and Ishmael at that time, points to a brighter days ahead. It pointed to better days are coming in their future. And the last time Hagar went away, she ran away. Last time she was pregnant with that boy, with Abraham's child. And Sarah giving us all kind of trouble, boy. So she got up out of there, and while pregnant. And then when she left, God met her. God met her on her journey out of there, and God met her and gave her a promise that your child, your unborn child, Ishmael, is going to grow up to be a man. He's going to grow into manhood, adulthood. Don't worry about what's going on. This boy going to grow up. And this is in Genesis chapter 16, verse 7 through 12. And at that time, in the very next verse, verse 13, look what she did. She called the Lord. She says, "Thou God seest me." And it must have seemed at that time that God didn't see her situation. And it must have seemed at that time that God was breaking the growth promise of the child. That this boy's going to grow up and he's going to be a grown man. And so not even giving a thought, though, to her own death, she wept a loud, bitter cry for her child. Hard time and trouble, and ain't got nothing to eat, ain't got nothing to drink, can really cloud our thinking. Even when it's been confirmed, it can cloud our thinking. Trouble and hard time. Anybody been there? Anybody ever had any trouble or hard time to where you knew you had done all the right thing, you've heard all the right words, but it was so difficult, the trouble was so hard, that where even though you've been affirmed and confirmed, you said, no, this here don't look too good. But God is always in control. And God always has our situation under control. Don't nothing get past God. Ain't nothing bigger than God. Ain't no problem bigger than God. He is God. See? And it's easy to forget that when trouble is in the house, trouble is in the land, trouble is in the company, trouble is on the job, trouble is in the family, trouble is in the neighborhood, trouble is in the politics. of all levels. It's hard to see that sometimes, but he's always there. Now, it's easier said than done. I know it is, but that don't change the fact that God is always there. Don't let nobody fool you. Now, in the second part of a lasting promise, letter B, God's hearing. Look what it says in verse 17 and 18. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, what aileth thee? You know, old folks said, but what aileth you? But what aileth you, boy? Old folks said that, you know, what aileth you? What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God had heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation, is what the word says. Now you look at this situation right here now. She out here about to die. They out here in the wilderness, ain't got no food, ain't got no water. She done put that boy way over here up under the bush somewhere. She done went way over here. And the Lord told her, look, you're gonna be a great nation. You see, this boy ain't gonna have 12 princes, 12, not just 12 boys, 12 princes gonna come from this boy here. And so think about that, y'all. Just think about any situation that we've been in and how it looks. And how we can look at the way it looks now, but God can look here. God see way down the road. God see on the other side of trouble, and he sees triumph. Whew. I got to move on this lesson. I got to move on this lesson here. So let's look at a little commentary. So the angel of the Lord commanded Hagar, fear not. And we see these two words, fear not. This fear not command is all throughout the Bible. You read about it in Joshua chapter 8, verse 1. You read about it in Matthew chapter 28 and verse 5. You read about it in Luke chapter 1, verse 13 and 30. Fear not. And when God calls his people to fear not, he calls them to love him. And he calls them to trust his plans for their life. See, he knows the thought that he has for us, thoughts of peace and love and happiness and joy, to give us a real beautiful, wonderful, expectant end. God knows. We don't always know. Most of the time we don't know. And y'all think about this now. I say this kind of often. Think about where you come from, where the Lord brought you from. Many of us that's on this webcam, watching this morning, you came from outside toilets, and like I did, and night pots, and ain't had no hot running water in the house. Hot water? Turn the faucet on to get hot water? No, you pour some water in a bottle, in a pot, put that pot on the stove and warm that water up and get it hot, and mix it with some cold water to get that water to have a wash up. See? In the foot tub or the wash pan. And when you had wash pans and foot tubs and night pots and outside toilets, you know, and we said back home, good and well, you didn't see no house with no 3 and 4 bedrooms, no 2 and 4, 3 bathrooms, no car garages, no land and no lawn mowers that you own, and no, sure enough, no ride mower. You ain't see none of that stuff back there then. You didn't see it. But God saw it. Ain't that something? God saw it. He knows the plans that he has for our life. So look at this. The name, just the name Ishmael, is a combination of Hebrew words. What do they mean? God hears. God hears. God is not deaf. He don't need no hearing aids. God hears. Read about this in Genesis 16 and 11. So God heard the voice of the lad. Look what it says. Where he is. And God can hear us where we are. So this proved then that her son's name, this proved was reassuringly true. Even when the boy's mother had lost her capacity to hear. It was almost gone. God still heard. The mother's capacity to hear, understand, accept what the Lord said, that capacity, her ability to hold those words was almost gone. And boy, the Lord still came on in, didn't he? So let's look at the commentary on verse 18. In verse 18, in Genesis 17 and 20, the Lord promised that Ishmael was going to become not just a nation, he was going to become a great nation. And in Genesis 12, 1 and 2, the Lord also made a similar promise to Abraham. Abraham, you're going to have a boy, and that boy there is going to have a boy. And they're going to have 12 boys. Isaac's going to have a boy named Jacob. Jacob's going to have 12 boys, and them boys there's going, from them 12 boys, the whole nation is going to be born. You read about this in Genesis 25, 12 through 18, and also chapter 49. Read the whole chapter 49. It's a very, very amazing story. So these Ishmaelites showed up in the story of Joseph. Joseph's story. Y'all, you've heard about Joseph, right? Sold into slavery, his brother threw him in a pit. These Ishmaelites showed up. See? Down the line, this grandboy's story, Joseph's, in Genesis 37, verse 25 through 28, and they were nomadic, they were a wandering people, and living up in the northern Arabia area. See, you don't never know who's gonna cross your path again. See, you don't never know who's gonna come across you again. So we need to learn to treat people right. Because when they cross your path again, they're going to treat you right or they're going to treat you wrong. They're going to remember how you helped them or they're going to remember how you hurt them. Sometimes even if you help them, they're going to still hurt you. So just treat them right on your way up or on your way down. You'll meet them again. Ain't that something? God has a way to turn the tables of time. Because you know why? He know the end from the beginning. Boy, that's something right there. So now, let's go to letter C, God's help. Verse 19 and 20. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew, and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. So in verse 19, it appears that Hagar was exhausted, she was dehydrated, and she couldn't have see. So she could, when I said she couldn't have see, she couldn't see the trees for the forest for the trees. She couldn't see the water right before her eyes. And when God opened her eyes so she can see, she had enough water to revive that boy, her son, and to help her. And when her eyes were open, and she got a little water, got some nourishment, it kept hope alive. And many of us have been in situations where the answer was all around us, but we couldn't see it. You know why I couldn't see it? Because, boy, it was a rough spot. Anybody been in a rough spot? Anybody in a rough spot now? Ask the Lord, please open my eyes that I can see your provision, that I can see you'll make a way out of no way. See? And then in verse 20, God, see, we've learned this over the years, that God is going to look out for his people. He's going to look out for his chosen people in a very special way, but he also is going to care for everybody outside that group. So Christians need to be careful too now. God ain't going to do nothing about that. Let's look at him over here. Just look at him. Just look at him. Look, God, he reigns on the just and he reigns on the unjust. And he'll bring the unjust in and be the best deacon and missionary you ever seen in your life. So be careful now, because he don't just love you, he loves the whole world. How you know? He sent his only begotten son. And he died on Calvary's cross. And he rose the third day with all power in his hand. He gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, or will not perish, but they're going to have the gift of eternal life, but they got to believe. So he didn't see what was going on at that time. He didn't see that he's a good archer. He didn't see that being a good... See, bows and arrows was a pretty big deal back at that time, bows and arrows. They used bows and arrows to hunt. They used bows and arrows to wage war. And this gift that Ishmael had, he didn't probably see it at that time. This gift that he had was going to lead to his protection, was going to contribute to his survival and prosperity. He wasn't no broke man down the line. After all, 12 of his boys, all 12 boys were princes. And princes, they got a little bit of something, you know. They can take care of themselves. They can take care of their families. They can take care of an extended family. He didn't know about. So we need to ask the Lord, and listen, I know I ain't trying to hurt nobody, but instead of belly aching and complaining, Lord, show me my gift. And then not only, but then help me to utilize this gift for your glory. And as a result of that, you are blessed. We'll get the residue of the blessings. This is an outstanding lesson. And I want to kind of give you a conclusion. Hagar had a difficult life. But Ishmael's name reminds us that God can hear. And Abraham's God, who loved both Isaac and Ishmael, cares for all people and always keeps all of his promises. He hears all the cries of injustice, and he's going to respond with a message of hope. And it's up to us to preach that message, teach that message, and live that message before a world that's watching and seeing, are we going to do the right thing? Hey, class, we're out of time today. We got to bring this thing on home. And listen, we thank y'all for plugging in today. We're looking forward to seeing you again, if the Lord says the same time, next Sunday morning at the same time. So thank you again. Have a great rest of the week. And again, Happy New Year. We're in the 8th day of the new year now, and this time is marching on. Y'all have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Take care.